Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to those I haven't met. Welcome, and those who are returning from a distance and coming back from COVID in full vigor, I see. We just chanted the Gata on opening the sutra, and tonight I'm not actually talking about a sutra. I'll be talking about the precepts. In Buddhism, we have the three legs of practice, which are the meditation, which is what we just practiced with, study, which is what we are engaging in the course of this talk, and also morality or precepts, the ethical underpinning. And there are many practitioners who come to Buddhism for the ethics of interdependence. And so here we are about to celebrate the Independence Day, but actually we prefer to celebrate Interdependence Day. And usually we have a sesshin at this time, a retreat, the Interdependence Sesshin. This would have been the 13th year of that, because my co-teacher was really sick. So we just narrowed it to a one-day practice, very, very brief. The interdependence is one of the essential conditions of all Dharma, all conditioned Dharmas, all phenomena, all forms that make up a living wholeness that we are part of. These are the Dharmas. And we're beginning a series on Tuesday nights on Buddhism's 10 grave precepts. And because they are so intertwined with our everyday life, I'm going to depart from the custom of not so much talking directly about the political and social situation we're faced with, but I am going to talk about it tonight in relation to precepts, because it's such an urgent moment. So we'll talk about today the spirit of the precepts and their practical application. Precepts are not theoretical. They are not absolutist. It's important to approach them in the spirit with which they're offered, which is not as absolutes to do or not uphold. They are not thou shalt nots, but rather they're guides for action in our very complicated everyday lives, where we balance our own personal preferences and needs with the situation in the larger community that we're all part of, or the many communities that we're part of, human and non-human. So as guides, precepts point to the spirit of seeing clearly how things actually are, which is really how we define truth, how things actually are, or how we define wisdom, is seeing things clearly as they are. And they're guides to compassion, how we bring a compassionate heart which is willing to see things as they are and to align truthfully. And this reaches beyond a simplistic frame of this or that, right or wrong, or I don't like it or I like it. We usually operate according to those dualisms, and this is not criticism. This is not, the spirit of Dharma practice in general is not to criticize, it's to look into and to become much more aware of the infinity of conditions that we are always living with and in some way responding to. And we want to do that wisely, we want to do it skillfully, And we want to do it in a way that's non-harming. That's generally the attitude of the Buddhist life. Difficult situations present many more choices than just one. Not a, do you believe? Or do you believe this or do you not believe this? Which side are you on? And we can tend to think in these dualistic terms that don't take into account the subtleties, the specifics, and the much more far-reaching consequences of situations that we face. When we really settle into this or that, that is the basic position of fundamentalism. And it's it is this way and no other way. Consequences be damned. That's fundamentalism. And it's found in Buddhism. It's found, it's human. We can really, really get caught, especially when we're afraid or we don't have a whole lot of information. No matter what the particulars of a situation are, there's only one way to frame it when we're in an energetic, when we're filled with the energy of fundamentalism. Does anybody here ever experience that? Raise your hand. So fundamentalism is a very narrow way to formulate the complexity of life. What is it like to take no position at all? So that's that we're always asking that. What is it? Are we ever free of view? Well, I would posit, no, we're not actually. We always have some point of view as long as we are embodied in one spot in the world and in the psychic realm, to allow for the widest view to inform our choices. Well, yeah, that's something that we can all strive for. To appreciate situational ethics. That takes discipline and willingness and tolerating don't know. Could be. I'm not sure. We don't always need to choose, but sometimes we have to. So this is what we're always faced with as we live day to day. Taking a stand, sometimes, often, holding forth with our opinions, just about always. In a life of practice, we recognize them as opinions. We recognize opinion. It is a distinct, almost physiological feeling. You know what I mean? When you're caught up in your opinions. When I started looking at this, I realized, whoa, that's painful. It's painful. The way that I hold opinions is really painful, actually, if I look at it. And yet, my opinions really are pretty good, right? Well, hopefully. So here again, it's complicated. But it's really important to notice when they have commandeered our whole attention and are narrowing our vision. And to know if you're holding opinions in this way, it really takes practice. It takes discipline and awareness to work with opinion so that it is not poisonous. And good luck to all of us. Either we can narrow our focus and continue struggling to decide between either this or that, or we can widen the view to a fuller sense of how large the field is in which our thoughts and feelings are arising. Our various ego positions: gender, age, class, race, educational level, elite or disserved by the economic system. These all go into our ego position. They all go into how we experience being in the world. And we all have feelings about where we stand in relation to all these things. So how well do we know these elements of our own experience? It is our we are all capable of looking and becoming much more aware of how our views are formed, what is contributing. And what if our circumstances had been quite different, how we might see things. What do you take for granted and what are you blind to? Hopefully practice is revealing this to you. Not just what's gone wrong for you in your life, but also what is blessing you and what protections have favored you in your life. Very important to recognize this. It is an important ingredient in compassion and gratitude and patience and don't know mind. So when we're having a difficult conversation or hearing about some devastating thing in the news, we can notice how we move from our direct experience into a second order of experience, almost without being aware of it, in which our reaction to the conversation or the news overtakes everything else, any information, any questions that might actually arise if we were not overwhelmed by feeling and reactivity. Have you noticed that? You know, you turn on the news and immediately reactive mind is called up. The feelings in the body, thoughts in the mind, emotions become the most compelling thing that's happening and replaces the fullness of whatever is unfolding. Now, this is one thing in the news, and it's another thing in our personal lives, in our immediate situations. We have more to do, more immediate effect, usually, in what is part of our personal lives. In the Buddhist tradition, this is known as getting caught up in opinion and feeling is known as putting a head on top of your head, putting another head on top of your head. And actually, in some of the paintings of the Buddhist realm, you'll see pictures of Buddha with heads piled up. And that's us. Opinions put a head on top of our head, maybe a lot more than just one. So once again, it's really important to integrate Zazen and awareness as part of our life through steady practice. We learn to discern our qualities of mind during Zazen. Just following the breath. How many states of mind did you experience? How many distracted thoughts happen? We really get to know each other. We get to know ourselves. We learn to discover qualities of mind during Zazen, observing whatever is going on in our minds, any situation, or in the world, and also equally seeing our own reactions arising to whatever it is that we're observing. It's amazing, to just watch the display in your mind when you're sitting Zazen. It's really quite impressive. And how the mind leaves the body. And this time frame, I mean, you can leap back 40 years, or 20, depending on how old you are. Or forward, we leap all over the place. The body is our ballast in this life. But when we are just sitting still, the mind goes all over the place. So all of this is not to condemn having opinions. We all have them. But it is a call to be aware when we're in the grip of opinion and how it contributes to separating from anyone who doesn't hold the same. Splitting reality in two. This is one of the many ways that we do that. Splitting reality in two. Me, other. When we become aware of the characteristics of holding an opinion, through practicing with it, seeing how opinion feels and functions in us, is how it has effects, we can see much more clearly at key times when we are brought to reactivity. When we've been doing it all along, practicing as a baseline practice in Zazen, then when we're in the midst of our lives, we have so much more resource of mind and heart. When we aren't gripped by reactivity, we have access to our commitment to precepts, to refrain from harming, and to intend benefit. We can become much more responsible. That is, meaning able to respond rather than react. Able to exercise choice in how we respond in difficult conditions. We develop discernment beyond just liking and disliking. Discernment which allows for the actual complexity of whatever the conditions are that we find ourselves in. Beyond just the either or that we can so easily get caught up in. And how any issue in the public sphere is framed. It's one reason why the news is so inciting. It's because it's just about always either or. And we are partialized when we get caught in a bath of emotion and reactivity. It's hard to think freely when we are so flooded with emotion. Ethical discernment. Ethical discernment is a foundation that we strengthen in precept practice. And whenever we notice we're gripped by opinion and refrain from narrowing into, I know and you don't, they don't. Ethical discernment demands our intelligence and includes the truth of the interdependence of all life. Our ethics are based on, soaked in, the realization of interdependence. So now we get to the part where I want you to notice your reactivity, okay? Consider the first of the 10 grave precepts, do not kill, but cherish all life, as it applies to the recent Supreme Court decision prohibiting abortion. Did anything come up? Can a question that has so many consequences for the human population and all of our individual lives be so simple? This particular opinion by 6 people cut off room to consider what the way of harm is and what is the way of greatest good in relation to this particular question. The first of the pure precepts is refrain from harm. And when we come up with a single pronouncement, we run the risk of untold harm if we haven't considered all of the ways that one decision goes out into the population. This is a prime example of how an opinion, even one that claims care for another, can lead to consequences that wreak havoc in many, many lives, bringing grave harm in its wake. Consider who the other is in abortion. Is a fetus an other or part of the mother's body? This is one question that underlies any opinion about abortion. Let's ask it without jumping into having an opinion about it. It's an important question to consider because there's no easy solution to this question. And here's another question that underlies any opinion about abortion. Is it killing? Or is it caring for the broader consequences of an unintended pregnancy? This is another question that's raised about abortion. What about pregnancy with a fetus that has profound malformation so that their life at birth and thereafter will be hell. Profound pain that goes on until who knows what. I actually had a client who this was true for, and she suffered profoundly. With precepts, we aspire to be open and flexible and sensitive to the larger context within which we act, so as not to bring harm when we intend good. Though we're not in control of all the conditions, and we may well not know a lot of the conditions. This requires a careful and steady practice of staying open, even as we do hold a point of view, because there's always more to be seen. In making abortion illegal, the intention is to protect life, to express the incredible preciousness, innocence, the incredible preciousness of an infant. Do any of us make decisions outside of this tenderness toward the preciousness of life? I don't think so. As one nurse practitioner who worked for years in an abortion clinic wrote, "No one comes in happy and no one leaves happy." It is a sad, deeply sad time of grief to be in a situation that ends in an abortion, no matter what. So this one opinion ignores so much attendant on a pregnancy and assumes so much about abortion, which a pregnancy, whether it's completed or interrupted, brings a variety of dangers with it, no matter what. Miscarriage, ectopic pregnancy, if not carefully managed, brings risks to a woman beyond the emotional damage that can ensue. Risk of uterine perforation, organ failure, infection, infertility, and sometimes even death, if not well attended to. Most miscarriages are caused by factors beyond a pregnant person's control. But even already, there have been cases of women who have miscarried or had a stillbirth and been arrested for murder. And I imagine we're going to be hearing some more about that. What about the children that were already born to them, waiting at home for them to come? This situation even reaches way beyond disrespect and injustice, way beyond whether women have any choice about whether or when or how many children they'll bring into this world. It affects disproportionately the poor, people of color, certainly women, not the men, quite as directly, but everybody's involved, everybody is affected. It ushers in not only unsafe abortion, we go back to that, but also widespread criminalization of pregnant women. Healthcare workers, doctors, pharmacists, friends, family, and anyone who comes in contact with a pregnancy that doesn't end in a healthy birth. What about that girl, 10 years old, we're hearing about today from North or South Dakota, who was raped and is pregnant? She hasn't even been having regular periods, and she is not allowed to have an abortion. Even birthing at age 10 is probably life-threatening. What of any woman who's been raped or is at risk for pregnancy to begin with because of other illnesses and conditions? Or what of a woman who already has children, has no income, little support? What of the children born to addicted parents who had no choice? To overworked and deeply stressed parents who already have scant resources to educate and care for their kids, no matter how much they love them. The possibilities of harm that come from this opinion that claim to protect life are endless. I'm bringing this very dramatic case up to highlight how essential working very deeply and minutely with precepts is to our practice, to our realization, and to bringing benefit into the world. The life or well-being of many lives are undermined by rigidity of opinion. This is the nature of opinion that's so vital to recognize in our own personal lives. How does it affect your marital relationship, your relationship with your kids or your neighbors or your friends? How we hold our own opinions. The abortion decision is an example from our collective life that we are clearly interwoven with all of life. There are too many threads about this issue to follow in this talk. I had to resist that because I feel so inflamed by this issue. But it continues to affect the entire web of life on this planet. This theme weaves into so many other arenas of our collective life and will have consequences for population, the natural environment, gun control, division of church and state. We could follow these threads infinitely to describe the fundamental interpenetration, interpermeability of how everything we do affects everything that we do. So usually in a Dharma talk, we don't go here because it's so nice to leave practice feeling like peaceful and calm and all is one, which is true. But this is the challenge of a practice that's real, that's really going to deeply question the basis for suffering and the basis for living our own lives carefully. We practice to wake up and be able to be capable of taking refuge in the possibility of liberating wisdom. But at the same time, we don't separate from the conditions of the world. That's not possible, first of all. And it's not what the Bodhisattva path is all about. We take up our lives within these conditions and do our best to respond with wisdom and care. We do our best. That's all. That's all we can do. We're waking up in the midst of great troubles in the earth community. The relative conditions and the absolute arise together, clearly before our eyes and throughout our whole lifetime. And as people of the way, we're called on, along with everyone else, to see carefully into the issues and respond not just from outrage, though this can grip many of us at times, but to look into how we can orient to this state of collective fear and hostility and rigidity of opinion and the spell that casts. We see a whole society under a spell right now, which flies in the face of our essential interdependence. Abortion outlawed, gun rights expanding, the natural world in profound disruption. We're all working with how we can orient in a way that our actions don't add to the harm. This is the first pure precept, do no harm. At least we can aspire to it. Keeping our eyes and hearts, we practice with precepts, which always challenge us to look deeply and carefully at our own minds, our own behavior. And this demands discipline. This is where discipline comes in. The discipline of vow, the discipline of zazen, or we could say the discipline of just stopping. Stop the body, stop the mind, just be here. Quiet down, calm down. The discipline of keeping precepts, holding ourselves to the intention to stay aware, stay awake. William Stafford said, the darkness around us is deep. Be patient, practice generosity. This is the discipline of refraining from mindlessly being led around by our opinions. The touch of a troubled world is ours to respond to. So let's be aware.